in your book, Grateful, little plug again, um, there's a whole chapter dedicated to your close friend of 30 plus years, Terry Bollea. Um, I wondered how the relationship between you has evolved over all the time you've known one another. Like when you first pitched this idea in 1994, when he's filming Thunder in Paradise for him to come to WCW, um, did you feel like it took a while to earn his trust? Did you feel like you two connected instantly, or do you feel like you had to really battle to earn the trust there?
Both. I don't think Hulk started to really trust me intimately, meaning when we would sit down and have a conversation about how to do an interview, about an interview in particular, or creative, or any aspect of the business, that took a long time,
Mm.
as it should have, because I didn't look when I first started talking to Hulk back in 1994. I'd never run a wrestling company before. I'd never accomplished anything in the past. I had no track record. I was this young new kid that people heard about. I was close to 40, but compared to now, I was a kid. But I was so new to the scene that nobody in their right mind should have trusted me. I wouldn't have trusted me just because I didn't have the knowledge and the experience to go, he did this and he did this and he did this. So, okay, he's got some credibility. I'll give some trust here. I had nothing. And I just popped up out of nowhere with this wrestling company that I was running. And it took now on a personal level, we connected very quickly on a personal level. I think he appreciated, we became friends fairly quickly. And we socialized fairly often outside of wrestling. Like my family would go down to Tampa over the 4th of July, and our families would spend time together and, barbecuing or going out to eat or taking a ride on his boat and all that kind of stuff. His kids, my kids, our wives never once talked about wrestling. So that part of our relationship evolved very quickly. But the trust part, when it came to business, is one of the more difficult things to achieve with Hulk Hogan because of the position that he's been in for as long as he's been in it, and having the multitude of wrestling promoters, in my case, a producer, promoter, whatever you want to call it. Throughout Hulk's career, he had been manipulated, taken advantage of, disappointed along the way by people that he did trust. I've heard often stories long ago about when Hulk first got to WCW, and we would talk about his time in WWE. One of the things that came up occasionally was the fact that Hulk felt like he should have been a partner with Vince. He should have had equity in WWE because Hulk felt, and rightfully so, that he was at least partly responsible for the success of WWE.
Yeah.
And Vince would never acknowledge that. So there was always this, and still is to this day, who's really responsible for the success of WWE?
Mm.
Was it Vince McMahon solely? Was it Hulk Hogan solely? The truth, in my opinion, is they're both joined at the hip in that regard. Vince could not have done it. Vince could not possibly have achieved what he achieved early on in those critical years without Hulk Hogan.
Mm.
It would not have happened. Conversely, Hulk Hogan would have never become the international. He was one of the most famous people in the world at some point. Not the most, but one of most recognizable, I should say. Hulk Hogan could have never achieved that without Vince McMahon.
No, but
so it was such a symbiotic kind of thing. But Hulk felt like, hey, and in fact asked for it. I remember Hulk, relaying to me the conversation, his version of it, where he went to Vince and said, "Hey, brother," because Hulk moved from Florida up to Connecticut, which, if you're not from the United States and you don't know people that grew up in Florida, to pick up your shit and move to Connecticut from Tampa, Florida, living on the beach is a major thing. Yeah. And Hulk dropped everything, moved to Connecticut, lived very close in proximity to Vince because they worked together so closely in those early years. And Hulk at one point during that period of time went to Vince and said, Vince, I think I deserve a piece of this company. And Vince shut him down. Like there was not even a conversation about it. He just shut it down instantly. And because of that, and in other situations, not as extreme as that or as obvious as that, but others, from whether it be Vern Gagne, Hulk Hogan left the AWA and went to WWE because Vern Gagne wouldn't share in the revenue that was being created with Hulk Hogan merchandise, which was blowing off the shelves. Vern was greedy. Vern believed that since, hey, I pay you to show up for these events, I get to make money however I can. As opposed to saying, okay, Hulk, you're a special case. I've never sold these many T-shirts, never sold this much merchandise in the history of my company. Yeah, let's split it. Let's share in the revenue. I'll give you 10% of what I get or 50% of what I get. Vern wouldn't do it. Absolutely shut Hulk down, similar to the way Vince did. So Hulk left Vern and went to Vince. Vern did that to himself by being greedy. But that's an example of some of the things that happened throughout Hulk's career that just embedded it within him an inherent distrust of promoters. So for me, it took me a long time to overcome some of those issues, but we did. Yeah. By 1997 or so, there were so many circumstances where obviously that trust was there. Fast forward to long after WCW, long after all of this, we're talking about the early 2000s, when Terry, Hulk, going through the divorce, his son was involved in a tragic car accident and his life was turning upside down. He was when I say spinning out of control, there was just so much going on around him that he had a hard time managing it all. In addition to what I would consider, if it was me, depression, because my life was collapsing around me. I was worried about my kids, worried about his reputation, worried about losing everything to his wife, through the divorce environment. At one point, I hesitate, but this has been made public previously, so I'll say it. At one point, Hulk turned over control of all his assets to me in order to protect himself from lawsuits or his wife. So there was a point in time when I could have bought Fiji. Like, yeah, I would have changed the name to something else. No, I like Fiji. It would have been a cool name. But my point is that trust, after everything at WCW, there was a point in time when I managed all of Hulk's trademarks. And when I say managed, he basically told me, you speak for me. If there's an offer and you think it's good, you can sign that offer on my behalf. That's a lot of trust, but it took a long time to get there.